Podcast. I'm your host, Tubby. I'll be the host for the next couple episodes by myself while Jimothy is out traveling the world and seeing all the sights. Tonight we got week 4 the NFL picks and week 5 of college football. But before we get into that, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, hit that subscribe button, click on that notification bell so you get an update and a notification each time we post a video or we go live. We try to go live twice a week with some NFL news, some college news, and shortly we'll be talking about the MLB playoffs. So you don't want to miss that. So if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you doing? Because we're the best podcast you haven't heard of yet. So go ahead, hit that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, and join in and be a part of the W Sports Podcast. So let's go ahead and jump right into week 4 of the NFL season. Now, there's not a whole lot of great games on the slate for the NFL season or NFL week 4. You had a solid matchup last night. Seattle tried to blow it. Arizona tried to come back, and defense at the end was not enough for Arizona to hold off and potentially go into overtime. We saw Marvin Harrison maybe get over that hump, especially in the fourth quarter. That big catch over Devon Witherspoon, you could tell that it was just kind of a relief off of him to be able to get that catch and bring him within one score. But at the end, Seattle was just a little too strong, and rightfully so. They should have won that game. They controlled the game, both sides, offense and defense, throughout the game. So the rightful winner won. But I think the biggest thing for Arizona last night was their defense has looked solid, even with a decimated secondary. Their top 3 corners were out, and then they lost a couple guys, corner wise in the secondary during the game too. So we'll see what happens, next week. But I think Seattle's defense is one of the more underrated defenses in the NFL right now. Devon Witherspoon, Reek Woolen. Once they get Nicky and Manworry back, Julian Love, that pass rush, they may not have the big name guys, but those guys are able to get after the quarterbacks, the defensive line, linebackers. They have set themselves up with a really good defense that can win them games. And this was, the talk that me and Jimothy had at when we were doing our predictions. This was the team that we're like, we really could potentially see Seattle win this division, depending on what Matthew Stafford's health looks like throughout the season. And right now, they're showing that they are probably going to be a formidable team in the NFC West. But let's go ahead and look at some of the games that haven't been played yet this week. I think first off, you look at and you see Philadelphia, Tampa Bay, 2 playoff teams from last year, more than likely 2 playoff teams again this year. Now, Tampa Bay will be without Mike Evans, but they do look like they are probably going to get Chris Godwin back this week. Emeka Egbuka has been incredible, but Baker did show up on the injury report today, and he's officially questionable heading to this game. But if you know Baker, more than likely, he's going to tough it out. He's going to play in this game. I think this is really the first real test for Philadelphia, because Kansas City, we know they're not the power that we know right now. I mean, they have so many injuries on the offensive side, especially, playmakers on the outside. So I think this is going to be the real test for Philadelphia. I mean, Nolan Smith is out. Got a couple of guys in the secondary. Dory Jackson's hurt. I think it's going to be interesting. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go with Tampa Bay, even without Mike Evans. I think Emeka Egbuka, I think Chris Godwin, I think Bucky Irvin are going to be a little too much for a defense that I'm just not completely sold on, which is crazy to say. When we looked at Philadelphia last year, the defense was the calling card, along with Saquon running the football down everyone's throat. I had questions coming into the season about the pass rush for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I haven't seen it improve. Yeah, you signed Zadarius Smith, but he's on the wrong side of 30 and is more of a couple down guy, not someone that you can put out there and play a bunch of snaps. So I'm gonna go ahead and lead towards the Buccaneers to upset, because Philadelphia is a 3.5 point favorite, but to upset the Eagles and Tampa Bay. Then we're going to look at the Kansas City Chiefs Baltimore Ravens matchup. I don't think anyone looking at the beginning of the season would look at these two teams and go, okay, one of these teams is going to come out of this matchup 1-3 to start the season. which is crazy to say, but both of these teams have had such tough schedules to start the season. I mean, Baltimore gets the Bills week one, blow the big lead, lose that game, come back, beat Cleveland, and then turn around and lose uh, last week in a, yeah, maybe the score is a little closer than what it was, but really a thumping from the Lions. And you look at Kansas City, start the season out with the Chargers, and the Chargers are looking like one of the stronger teams in the AFC right now. And then play the Eagles, lose to the Eagles, and then get their first win last week against the Giants. I just don't know if there's enough firepower on the offensive side for the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, you get Xavier Worthy back this week, but there's something lacking within this offense, and I think a big part of it is the run game. They need to find a running back. I think Kareem Hunt is going to slowly start taking more and more of those first team snaps away from Isaiah Pacheco. He hasn't looked great after he came back from the injury last year. I thought maybe this year, fully healthy going into the season, he would probably, maybe bounce back, but he's just not running with the same authority or same speed that we've seen, his rookie year. So that I think somewhat worrisome from them that he's not back up to full strength or full power speed or whatever, and they're lacking within the run game. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to lean towards Baltimore. Not lean. I'm going to pick Baltimore. Baltimore's going to win this game. I think that until Rashee Rice gets back and healthy, that this offense for the Kansas City Chiefs is going to continue to struggle to put up points. And Baltimore is, I mean, granted, they're 1-2. They played two really tough teams and lost both of those games, but they were close games. So it's not like they were just getting absolutely blown out. The big thing for them is, can Derrick Henry hold onto the football late in the game and not blow another game by fumbling the football? That's going to be one of the biggest questions, because it's something that we haven't seen really from Derrick Henry. Like I mentioned, a couple of weeks ago, he usually only averages one fumble loss a season, and right now he's got three through three games in the NFL season this year. So uh, hopefully that's just not a precursor to the season for him. What's up, SML3? Welcome into the chat. Next game we're going to talk about, I think it's an interesting one just because the Packers look like the most dominant team in the NFL through the first 2 weeks, beating up on Detroit, beating up on the Commanders, and then turn around and losing in heartbreaking fashion to the Browns. But the offensive line problems for the Green Bay Packers don't look like they're going to be solved this week due to Zach Tom being out, Anthony Belton, the backup right tackle, being out, and potentially Aaron Banks being out. So you got three guys up along that offensive line that gave up, 7 sacks last week to Myles Garrett and that Browns defense. Granted, Dallas's defense doesn't have the pass rush that the Browns have and don't have the defense, so that should help out the Green Bay Packers. But I'm expecting the Packers come out with the win, and I think that we're going to see the emergence of Matthew Golden this week. We're going to see him get his confidence against a really bad defense, and he's going to put up a lot of points. And so I think this is the week that we finally see the first round pick that Green Bay took show out and put up some big numbers and look like that number one wide receiver that they drafted and expected to be their number one wide receiver. Ada Harris, thank you. I mean, something that we just love to do. Obviously, Timothy's not here, but just come on here, talk with y'all, talk NFL, college football, baseball, whatever. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell so you know every time we go live. And so the rest of the NFL, docket isn't anything special. I think there's one game that, and I know this is going to sound absolutely crazy, that you could potentially see an upset, and it's the Houston Tennessee game, and it's because we haven't seen Houston play good football at all this year. We've seen CJ Stroud not play good football for the last, year and a half. I mean, or at least half of last year, and so far through this season, offensive line is a huge problem for Houston, and for some reason, Tennessee always seems to give them a fit So I'm going to go with my big upset for the week in the NFL to be Tennessee over Houston, even though Houston is a 7.5 point favorite. But that's all I got for the NFL this week. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of great games outside of the few that we mentioned. So we're going to go ahead and jump over to college football, where there is a lot of amazing football games this week in college football. So buckle up because we're going to talk a lot of college football today. And I mean, I think there's a couple tonight. I think that are some interesting games with TCU, Arizona State. Arizona State not looking like they were last year, and we talked about this on the podcast at the beginning of the year of the season. That this is a team that relied so much on Cam Scatabo last year. Without him, what was the offense going to look like? And they've struggled. Jordan Tyson, Sam Levitt are great players, but them not having Scatabo has really took a big hit on this offense. And so I'm going to go ahead and take TCU. They aren't favorite, which is crazy, even though they are the ranked team. But I'm going to take them to beat Arizona State. Arizona State to start off with a not so great season. And we're going to go ahead and look down here, later tomorrow or in the afternoon tomorrow, or the early slate, I should say, tomorrow with USC Illinois. Illinois coming off the absolute just drumming from Indiana. Can they bounce back against a rising USC team? Jaden Miava has looked exceptional so far through the season for USC. They haven't really played anyone. This is going to be their first test of the season against a good defense that Brett Bielema can put out there. Last week was not that instance, but what does a Lincoln Riley offense look like against a Big Ten physical defense is something that we've talked about for years, that Lincoln Riley's offenses aren't suitable to go up against physical teams. So can they change that narrative this year and maybe put themselves in position to potentially be in the Big Ten championship game? We're going to go ahead and scroll down a little bit here, and we're going to look at Ole Miss versus LSU. This is a matchup that I think is super interesting. A lot of people, LSU was a talk at the beginning of the year about potential national championship, one of the favorites. Their offense has not looked that good, honestly. Their offense hasn't looked good. Their defense has looked a lot better, which is a great thing for them because their defense over the last couple of years has been their problem. But now we got it flipped where their defense is looking good. Their offense is looking kind of mundane, especially with Garrett Nussmeier coming back. And now with Caden Durham being out of this game, their leading rusher, where they've struggled over the last couple of years in running the football. Now you take the leading rusher for this team out. I think Ole Miss gets the win over number 4 and starts pushing themselves up towards the talk in the SEC. Even without Austin Simmons, their starting quarterback at the beginning of the season, the backup Chambliss has looked really, really good, and it has actually looked better than what Austin Simmons looked like whenever he was starting. So I'm going to go ahead and take Ole Miss to get the win over number 4, LSU down in Mississippi. So I'm going to go with them. And then you've got Penn State, Oregon on the docket. This is going to be the matchup of the weekend for me. I think we're going to see Penn State. Is this their year? Is this the year that they can get over that hump, win those big games, and win the Big Ten? This is the start of, are they for real, with a really good Oregon team coming in, a really good defense. There's, we're not quite sure with, Dante Moore. He's looked really good outside of, about a couple weeks ago against Oregon State. Can this offense be good enough to go up against a really good Penn State defense? The biggest thing is you are having to travel all the way from Eugene, Oregon to Pennsylvania. Can they overcome that jet lag, to say, and put up a fight against a really good Penn State team? I think so. I'm going to go ahead and take Oregon over Penn State because every time that we feel like we can believe in Penn State to get these wins against big teams and big matchups, James Franklin always seems to let us down. And same thing with Drew Aller. There's all 30 of the 32 teams are sending representatives to this game to watch Drew Aller. He's going to have to do something, and he cannot be what happened. It can't be what happened in the playoff game where the game was on his shoulders and he makes an ill-advised throw across the middle, gets picked off, and they lose that game. He has to show the maturity to not try to make those throws. And granted, I will give him his roses. He has improved every year he's been in college football. And I don't think a lot of people really understand that he's really only been a quarterback for three and a half years, where started in high school, he was a wide receiver or a tight end, one of the two. And so he's new at this, position of quarterback. So I think there's a lot of growth for him. And I've seen growth throughout, his college career, but can we see more growth in that maturity and go in and beat a really good team? I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and take Oregon over Penn State because I just trust what Dan Lanning is doing up in Eugene more than what I do Drew Allard and James Franklin in Pennsylvania. And then you got another big SEC matchup with Alabama at number 5, Georgia. This is going to be a interesting game to see if Alabama is really back, because they had the opening game against Florida State and they just got absolutely drummed. And then they bounced back, played good, but against lesser opponents. Wisconsin, I'm not going to put them in that category of being a good opponent, especially with their starting quarterback not being in that game. So can Kalen DeBoer right the ship and maybe take some of that heat off of him? Because there is a lot of heat on Kalen DeBoer after one season and then the big loss to Florida State to start the season. Can he get that signature win against Georgia in Athens? I think not. I think Gunnar Stockton, Georgia is going to be too much and too physical for an Alabama team that is not physical anymore. We're past the Nick Saban Alabama physical offensive line defense. This to me is a soft Alabama team. They don't play with that physicality, that motor that they had when Nick Saban was there. And I think Georgia goes in. Gunnar Stockton has a good game. They run the football effectively because that's what they have to do to win games. That's when Georgia's at their best, is when they can run the football. And we saw what uh, Florida State was able to do against this team in the run game. I think Georgia's going to be able to do somewhat similar, probably not as many yards, but put up a really good rushing attack and take out Alabama and continue to push towards that SEC championship. But if there's a team that maybe you are a fan of, I haven't mentioned yet, potentially, go ahead and drop it in the chat and I'll try to get to it. I think another interesting matchup is another SEC game. That's Texas A&M versus Auburn. It's at Kyle Field in College Station. Auburn coming off the controversial, if you want to say, game against Oklahoma, and Texas A&M coming off the win against Notre Dame. Something has to give. Can Texas A&M continue to put together signature wins where typically we see them start out good and start fumbling against these big teams? This Auburn defense is good. Marcel Reed, this Auburn defense is really good. Falk is really good. Marcel Reed has had a really good season. Can he continue against a really good physical Auburn defense? I think this is going to be a lot closer than a 7.5-point game. I think that's a crazy number. I know Texas A&M is ranked 9th, and Auburn's coming off a loss to Oklahoma. But Jackson Arnold, outside of holding the ball too long, played good. Cam Coleman played good. Their defense played really good. Can that offensive line hold up? And honestly, part of the fact that Oklahoma had 10 sacks against Auburn was due to Jackson Arnold holding the ball too long. So if they can get him to get rid of the football sooner, he's not going to get sacked 10 times, even especially because Texas A&M's defense is not near as good as Oklahoma's, especially across the front line. So I think this game is going to be really close. I think it's going to be closer to a 3 to 5 point game, but I'm going to take Texas A&M in a really close game just because it is going to be in College Station. It's going to be loud. It's going to be feisty. That crowd is going to show up. But if Auburn pulls off this win, I would not be completely shocked because Auburn has a really good defense. But let's see, what else do we got here? Not a whole lot of other games to talk about. I mentioned yesterday, which unfortunately we had some issues with YouTube and wasn't able to upload the video, even though we went live, and some people heard me talk about Mike Gundy getting fired and what are the potential candidates. So I'll go ahead and go through that again. Someone said Lincoln Riley in the chat yesterday. I don't see that being a situation that will ever happen. I don't know if Lincoln Riley would ever want to come back to the state of Oklahoma after the way he left things. And honestly, I don't think Oklahoma State has the funds to afford Lincoln Riley, especially playing, them were him hawing around about firing Gundy because of the $15 million buyout. So I don't see that as an option. I think they're going to go younger. I mentioned Ben Arbuckle yesterday, which is an Oklahoma fan. I hope doesn't happen, but I think they're going to want to go with someone that has some experience as a head coach somewheres. And there's a couple names that come to mind. I think one that is a very interesting name is going to be G.J. Kinney from Texas State. You're from Oklahoma. That name is very familiar because he was starting quarterback at Tulsa when Tulsa was actually a solid program, and we're consistently in the top 25. He has shown a lot, especially when it comes to an offense. The guy is great at calling plays, great at building a really good offense. Something I think that Oklahoma State's going to look for is going to be an offensive-minded head coach. So I think G.J. Kinney is a very interesting name to keep an eye out for. I think Morris from North Texas is another name to keep an eye out for. He built up that Incarnate Word team, and they were a really good program while he was there. He's starting to do the same thing with North Texas, so I think that's an interesting name. But there's also one that has a lot of Oklahoma ties, was a former quarterback. But the only question is, will he take the job? Would he take the job with the potential of maybe in a few years him being an NFL head coach? And that's Zach Robinson, former Oklahoma State quarterback. Now, this is someone I mentioned a couple of years ago when a lot of people maybe thought that Gundy was going to get fired with all the controversy that was going around the program, with some of the stuff that he had said, the shirt and all that junk. But I mentioned Zach Robinson whenever he was the quarterback coach for, I want to say the Rams, when he was the quarterback coach for them, that he would be the successor. Now, I don't know now with him being an offense coordinator in the NFL, and there is a lot of talk of him potentially being a head coach at some point in the NFL, but it can be hard to turn away the opportunity to coach your alma mater. And I think if the money was right, I think we could very well see Zach Robinson making that move from the NFL back down to college and taking over that job, because we've seen him be able to develop in the NFL and really help out quarterbacks and be a good quarterback coach, be a good offensive play caller. So I think there's those three names out, and potentially Ben Arbuckle, that are very interesting names to keep an eye out for the Oklahoma State job. But there's not any questions, so I think that's where we're going to end it. There's a lot of good football in college to watch this week. There's some really good NFL games to watch this week. So with that being said, I think that's it. I think that's all I've got. I've talked your guys' ear off for 25 minutes almost, so I'm going to go ahead and log off. But remember, hit that subscribe button, become part of the Dub Squad or the W Sports Podcast. Hit that notification bell so you know each time we go live. And I appreciate every single one of you that came in and said hi, gave some words of encouragement. Pixel Paul said, keep going, don't give up. We ain't giving up. This is something that we've done for 5 years, and it's just to have fun. Me and Jimothy, we used to talk sports all the time in school, get in trouble, and we figured, hey, let's just go ahead and do a little podcast. Nothing that we ever expect to make money off of. It's just something for us to do to keep in contact and, put out good, information and good, you know, content for y'all that is a little bit different than what you get from ESPN and some of these bigger networks and, bigger podcasts. Just two normal guys just having conversations, about football, baseball, and every once in a while we'll sprinkle in, basketball. Hey, the Ryder Cup's going on right now. USA's getting thumped. That's all I've done today is watch the Ryder Cup. So we appreciate every single one of you. I think we're up to 332 subscribers. So we appreciate all 332 of you. If you want to be the next one, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, become part of the Dub Squad. Until next time, see ya.